Is this thing on? I'm Johnny Massacre and welcome to the Johnny Massacre Show. On tonight's show, my book review of 1984 and Everything Sucks. So, I was composing the latest edition, if you will, of the Johnny Massacre Show, and I realised that everything sucks. There's no good news out there. I went on various news sites and I couldn't find anything interesting at all. It was all really boring, and it's all ultra political. Have you noticed how political things have gotten recently? I've always thought, well, actually, I know that when politics infect entertainment, entertainment goes downhill because entertainment is all about art, and art has to be relatable, and for art to be relatable, there has to be a truth in it. And there's no truth in art that is infected with politics, so it kind of sucks. What entertainment there is? Well, nothing really. I searched for video games online to bring you some video game news because I like video games, and all I could find was some news about an original copy of the Super Mario Brothers game for the Famicom or Nintendo Entertainment System, aka NES, selling for about $114,000 online in its original mint packaging and rare packaging at that. And that was about it. Microsoft is doing an event in about 3 days' time, 2 days' time, for the Xbox Series X. Now that is something kind of to get excited about in relation to video games. They're going to reveal Halo Infinite. I love Halo. I had the original Halo on the original Xbox. It was a moment in gaming. I had Halo 2 on the Xbox, and that was the rebirth of online multiplayer. I had Halo 3 for the Xbox 360. That is my favourite game of all time. And then after that, I didn't enjoy many of the Halos so much. But the last one, Halo 5, was not too bad. Kind of a return to form, but not quite there yet. So I have high hopes for this new Halo. It's been in development for fucking years. Probably about 5 years or something. Which means it could be pretty good. And I say that because the developer of Halo nowadays is 343, and they've only made 2 Halo games. Halo 4, which was fucking awful. Halo 5, which was them trying not to make Halo awful and rediscovering a little bit of the old bottled lightning that made Halo, Halo. And therefore, the fact that they've taken so long to bring this game out means I think they're confident with returning the series to its former flavors, and they've just really gone down that path for the last 4 or 5 years, confident that they're onto that old winning formula, and now they're just going to ram it home. It's going to be interesting because a lot has changed since the last Halo and this version of Halo because, well, microtransactions. Gaming's all about microtransactions, loot boxes, and surprise mechanics, as EA calls them. And so Halo dabbled in that, Halo 5, but it wasn't like the current format. When you would win a game, you'd have a chance to win a helmet or something, but it wasn't like now where it's gambling and you can pay to get more of these items. So expect to see a lot of that in the new Halo. Expect to see Halo attempting to adapt to the new market while pleasing its core audience, while moving the franchise forward. Trying to do all of these is nearly impossible, but I still have high hopes for Halo. So as far as video game news goes, there is nothing really going on, but there will be a lot in the days to come, and you will see me talking about that. Movie news, man, movies are so political these days, and movies are all just too high budget. There's too much riding on movies for producers to take any risks anymore. Look, if you give me loads of money to start a business, you want that business to work, right? So you're not going to let me go all flowery and super creative and try and do all these wicked, cool new ideas. You're going to want money in the bank. You're going to want tried and tested formulas. And that's what's going on with movies nowadays. So movies kind of suck. So I guess for the time being, if you get any movie reviews from me, they're going to be of classics. I started watching a classic recently, A Fistful of Dollars. A very, very stylish cowboy movie. The film that created the cool anti-hero image of the cowboy. I think before that it was all a bit cheesy, John Wayne kind of stuff. But Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is really the iconic anti-hero cowboy. And it's stylistically, it's amazing. I watched a bit of that with my friend, and apparently it's really simple, according to what people say online, but it's not. It's really hard to understand what the fuck is going on. but I actually kind of got it after rewatching it a few times. So I'm going to watch that fully, and I'll give you a review of that because that's a really cool film. So yes, there's nothing really going on in the world, and the only thing going on is political stuff. Man, I got so much ammo for the Johnny Massacre show in terms of politics, but it gets to the point where I copy and paste so many links of articles and YouTube videos into my preparation notes for the Johnny Massacre show that by the time I get around to making the show and I look at it, I just think, man, sometimes I can't be asked. It's moving so fucking fast. If you don't report on this news day by day, you're past it. And do you really want to hear more about this political shit going on right now? I didn't think you did. So I'll get into my book review of 1984. You should know that I had surgery 10 days ago, so I haven't done any exercise for, 12 days now. And I must have been ripped beforehand because holy crap, I'm still kind of big. I must have been massive. I'm starting to lose muscle mass though, but I'm going to go back to the gym tomorrow, which I'm quite excited about, if you're wondering why I look maybe a little bit different. So yeah, I've had a good break. Body's feeling not too bad, so looking forward to getting back into the exercise. So, 1984 by George Orwell. I remember trying to read this book a while ago and not getting past the first few pages. Actually, that occurrence was a regular thing whenever I tried to read a book some years ago. But for some reason, a little bit later in life, I discovered that I kind of like reading. I spent many years being super hyper creative and just using my brain for illogical stuff, chaotic stuff, which is awesome. But then at some point I realized that I'm kind of smart and my brain needs fuel. My brain is hungry for knowledge and hungry to learn. And if I don't give it that fuel, then my brain will die. So I realized that reading is fuel for my brain. So I started reading a bit. And 1984 is an all-time classic. It seems that whenever I mention it, my American viewers seem to know more about it than my British viewers, which is kind of ironic since the author George Orwell is British and one of the most famous British authors ever. So this is compulsory reading in schools. Probably not anymore because now it's probably racist by today's woke standards, but a lot of you know the book. And justifiably so, it is fucking famous because it is a masterpiece. To sum it up, it is an author's imagination of the most totalitarian country ever. So, I guess the most totalitarian countries, factually, historically, are Germany, Russia, China, and North Korea, right? The Nazis in Germany were part of a totalitarian system, a brutal one. The Russians, the Soviets, the communists were part of a hideous totalitarian system. China are part of a modern-day totalitarian system, and North Korea are probably the craziest totalitarians ever, or certainly by modern standards. And this book takes any one of those totalitarian countries and the idea that those countries stand behind and turns it up to 1,000. It just ramps it up as far as you possibly could in literary form. And that's what the book is. So, unfortunately, it's not a parody of totalitarianism. It feels like just shy of a reality. It's just a little bit too far-fetched to be reality, but not by much, which is one of the scariest things about the book, in that its totalitarianism depiction feels real and quite possible. And that is compounded by the fact that this book is riddled with predictions and imagination of the future that is similar to reality today. And that is fucking terrifying. In the book, people are constantly being monitored at all times, what they say and what they do. And they're monitored by these things called telescreens, which I think are basically TVs on the wall, and they are also cameras, video cameras that can watch you, and they are microphones that can hear you. And they will punish you for wrong think or wrong speak or anything you say that goes against the totalitarian nature of the party controlling all of this, which in the book is known as Big Brother. Today, our phones have cameras that can watch us. The camera which I'm speaking to you through can watch me. And it has been known that hackers can exploit these devices to watch people. But the terrifying thing is, we can be monitored by our phones, we can be monitored by our Xboxes and PlayStations, and we are, most terrifyingly of all, willingly monitored by our devices such as Amazon Echo, that monitor every single thing we say, and everything we say is stored in a database by these big tech companies. This is already happening. It is not yet used to punish us, but looking at the way things are going today, with race relations at an all-time low, Marxism more attractive than ever, and the potential slide into socialism looking more and more a realistic possibility, the fact that everything you've ever said ever is on a database, and what you say will be used against you by a large section of political nutters today, which are not so fringe anymore and are starting to look more mainstream, means that shit is getting scary. And this book is almost prophetic in what it talks about. The book was written 50 or 60 years ago, which makes all of this shit even more terrifying. In the book, the main characters are Winston, he's the protagonist, and his love interest, Julia. And you have the bad guy, which is O'Brien, and he's the Darth Vader of the story. And then you have the real bad guy, which is Big Brother, and he's the emperor of the story, if you will, to use a Star Wars comparison. Winston is not a very likable protagonist, I have to say. His hobbies include drinking himself into a stupor with cheap, oily-tasting gin and scratching his varicose ulcer on his ankle. He works for the party, and he is halfway between the elite and the proletariats, and he works in an office, and his job is to censor stuff. So there are 2 tubes above his desk, and through one of the tubes comes newspaper articles that he must edit. And when he edits them, he sends them back through another tube that goes to be officially published or recorded somewhere. And then there's another hole at his work desk, which is called the memory hole. So any facts in there or any people that want to be erased from history go into the memory hole, and then they're sent to a furnace. So that's his job. But Winston is a little bit of a rebel. So he has something he's not allowed to have, which is a diary. So in totalitarian countries, you're only allowed to have what the state gives you. And the things the state give you are garbage, because the people who make them because they're told to make them, not because they want to make them or that there's any special profit the more of them that they sell or the more innovative they make them. And so Winston goes against that socialist thing and gets a diary which is from the product of capitalism, from the free markets. He's not allowed to have it. And in his diary, at first he's not sure what to write, but he just writes whatever comes off the top of his head. And that little seed of an idea snowballs into a full-on rebellion against the Big Brother party. He starts writing down thoughts about his mother, who has been erased from history. She's gone down the memory hole. He starts writing about his hatred for Big Brother, the totalitarian regime. And eventually he meets a woman called Julia, who is a similar rebel in this Orwellian world. And they come together and they have an affair. Winston is married. They bang each other in a spot that no one can find them, apparently. And they fantasize about bringing down the totalitarian system. Now, the other character in this, O'Brien, Winston sees him, and O'Brien gives Winston a funny look, and Winston misconstrues that as a sign revealing O'Brien to be part of the rebellion, or the Brotherhood as it's known in this book. So Winston sets up a meeting with O'Brien, and in the meeting it's a little bit sketchy, but it appears that Brian is indeed part of the rebellion. It turns out, plot twist, that O'Brien is actually a member of Big Brother and has enticed Winston into a trap. And it turns out, ever since he even bought the diary, Big Brother knew about it. So they have been reading his diary right from the start. Winston, I think he put a hair on it, or he put some dust on it to make sure if anyone touches it, he'd know about it. But even the party were able to circumvent Winston's little trap there and have been watching him since the beginning. And so O'Brien eventually, after having watched him on the telescreens, presumably for some time, some years, enticed Winston into his trap and then finally busted him. And then Winston and his girlfriend Julia are busted at the same time in their little private love shack, which is this little antique shop upstairs owned by a man called Mr. Charrington. And Mr. Charrington was quite a nice character in the book, but it turns out he was a surreptitious member of the Thought Police, and he had facilitated their downfall with O'Brien. In the last part of the book, Winston is in a Ingsoc jail, or Big Brother jail. Ingsoc is newspeak for English socialism, which is the political system in the book. And Winston is horribly tortured, not in ways unlike people were really tortured, or are still tortured, in communist socialist countries. And it's a devastatingly depressing book. The ending is so depressing because the goal of Big Brother is to have complete control over people, control over what you say, and control over what you do. There's no sex allowed. There's no recreational sex allowed in this book. There is no recreation allowed. There's no fun relationships allowed. There's no sport allowed. There are no movies allowed. There is no free time allowed. It's just complete subservience to the party. It's so fucking depressing. And at the end of the book, it turns out Big Brother don't want to just control what you say and what you do, but they want to control what you think. And it's not enough you saying that you love Big Brother and acting like you love Big Brother, which is the leader of Ingsoc in 1984. But you literally have to think that you love Big Brother. You genuinely have to believe that. So they work on breaking down Winston's mind. And the way that they get him, the way that they manage to get him, the way that they manage to control Winston's thoughts are as follows. So the love interest, Winston's love interest, she represents everything that the party cannot take away. Even if Winston was to say he hated her, they agreed on this, they cannot change the way that he feels about her inside truly. He can say whatever he wants. He can act however he wants, but they cannot change the way he feels about her. And that is what gives you freedom. And George Orwell is so right about this. And there's parallels between his writing and other incredibly influential writers regarding existential philosophy and politics, such as Viktor E. Frankl, who wrote the groundbreaking Man's Search for Meaning, which is about what is the meaning of life, and it also deals with totalitarian systems. It's about a Jewish guy, a psychotherapist, surviving the Nazi camps. And that guy, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which has influenced some of the greatest modern thinkers of our times, including Jordan B. Peterson, massively, Viktor E. Frankl said, It doesn't matter what the Nazi guards do to you physically. They cannot take away your thoughts. They cannot take away how you choose to see things, how you choose to interpret things. That is your freedom, and no one can take that away from you, no matter how much they torture you. You can choose to still have love even for the people who capture you and torture you. They cannot change that. And that is your freedom. And that is what George Orwell articulates in this book through Winston's love for Julia. No matter what they do to him, no matter what they make him say or do, they cannot take away his love, which is eternal. But they fucking take it away in the book. And the way they do that is they go to room 101. And room 101 is the place where your worst fear will come true. Winston hates rats. So he goes into the room and they have this face mask, which is an extended wire mesh cage with rats in it behind a drawbridge. And then there's another drawbridge close to the face. And they put it on his face. They take the first drawbridge up and the rats go through. And O'Brien explains to him that this is a Chinese torture method. And the rats are so hungry that they will burrow through the eyes in search of food, or they'll burrow through the cheeks, the soft cheek flesh, and devour the tongue. And when O'Brien threatens to release the final drawbridge, pull it up, Winston says, "Do it to Julia, do it to Julia, don't do it to me, take her, make them rip her face off." And at that point, he realizes that he's just completely betrayed his love, and so he doesn't feel love for her anymore. The party made him realize that he was more important than Julia. And once you become more important than the person you love, believe me, you don't love him anymore. So that was awful. And then they actually meet up at the end of the book, and they're kind of indifferent towards each other. And that is even more depressing than them never having met each other and not even knowing. And they said, "We should meet again." And she walks off and he turns around because he kind of still loves her, but then he just lets her go, and that's it. And at the end of the book, it just says, he listens to some military propaganda on the radio, and it says, "And at that moment, there was a tear in his eye, and Winston loved Big Brother." Fuck you, book. Fuck you. So socialism won. And it couldn't be any other way, otherwise the book wouldn't be so powerful. But the book is mesmeric. It's one of those books where when it got to the halfway point, I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop reading it right until the end. It's a classic English story because we always have a bad ending. I don't know what it is with us. It has to be a negative ending. We love it. We do like a dark ending. Americans love the happy ending. British love the dark ending. And it's much more powerful that way. It really stays with you. You feel a sense of injustice. If there's one positive to be taken away from the book, I thought it took so much effort for the elites of Big Brother to convert just one man, Winston. It took years and years and years of surveillance and insanely inefficient methods to convert him, that considering the Big Brother elites, I can't remember what they're called, the higher party or something, the elites are only about 2% of the population, the book says, that it's never going to be possible to convert everyone completely to socialism. But it's still a fucking depressing book. And if you want to kind of... The interesting thing about it is I feel it's probably one of the best depictions of totalitarianism ever, even though it is fiction. I think because it's fiction, it enables the author to create such a vivid, colourful world that you can step into, that you understand totalitarianism better than if you had just read a factual historical book in some ways. So that's amazing. And for that reason, I recommend that you read it because there's so many parallels to what's going on today. And if you want to know about the dangers of censorship, aka social justice, just read this book because it is a pathway to totalitarianism, no exaggeration. So there's my review of 1984 by George Orwell, which was preceded by a massive rant about how there's nothing interesting going on at the moment. I will be bringing you another Johnny Massacre show soon. Make sure to support me on Patreon if you can. You can support me right there, because it really makes a difference. Shit is getting tight because of the C word. And if you want more of my rambles, then I'd really appreciate it if you support me, because it makes all the difference. I should give a shout out to some patrons, because why fucking not? I had a new patron recently, and he donated a lot, so I was really happy about that. So the current patrons I would like to give a shout out to are Drechim. So Drechim is my newest patron. We had a nice little chat there. He's a really straight up geezer. He told me, look, just do whatever you fucking want creatively. That's all I want. Don't sacrifice your style or truncate your message. And I thought, mate, he really understands what a real artist is about. So I really appreciated that. Also, we got Underbridge. What's up, Underbridge? Liam Taylor. We got Chibi Baguette, and we've got Isabella Ortega. Isabella's been a patron for some time, so I really appreciate that. And I love you guys, so thank you so much. And I tell you what, mate, you better be back for the next video. Otherwise, I'll be coming round your house. And make sure to like and subscribe, because that is what all those other cunts tell you to do. And hit that notification bell. Laters.